The Life of Zero Two, Darling in the FRANXX. Zero Two is the main heroine and the deuteragonist of Darling in the FRANXX. She's a human-klaxo sapien hybrid and a member of the APE Special Forces, primarily fighting on the front lines. As an elite parasite with the codename 002, also known as the partner killer, Zero Two had always accepted solitude due to her horns and Klaxosaur blood. Despite having no regard for human life or her own, and being accustomed to fighting solo, she took interest in Hiro and offered an opportunity to pilot with her, making him her new partner and darling. After Hiro was able to ride with her more than 3 times, the pair became the 13th Plantation's newest members, piloting the powerful FRANXX Strelizia. Over time, Zero Two developed romantic feelings towards Hiro. However, her determination to become fully human, along with Hiro's apparent fear of her increasing feral characteristics, resulted in the couple briefly drifting apart. When their relationship as partners began to take a turn and slowly crumble, they realized their forgotten memories of their meeting during childhood. The two chose to sacrifice their lives in order to safeguard and ensure the survival of mankind. 1,000 years later, Hiro and Zero Two's souls reincarnate as a pair of children that meet each other again and rekindle their romance. Welcome to the Anigaki. In today's video, we're going over the life of Zero Two. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Anagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media accounts. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Background. Zero Two was created by Dr. FRANXX out of the Klaxosaur princess's DNA. Many specimens like Zero Two herself were born but failed to survive, making her the only successful human-klaxo sapiens hybrid. Dr. FRANXX also created clones using Zero Two's cells, the Nines, but they didn't inherit the Klaxosaur blood. Due to Zero Two being the only specimen with Klaxosaur blood to survive, she was decided to operate the Star Entity, a collective mass of Klaxosaurs which can only be operated by a Klaxo sapien on humanity's behalf. Because of her high parasite potential and potential in general, she received the code number 002. Zero Two didn't receive the same regular training as the other children in the garden to become a parasite, since she'd been trapped in her room for as long as she could remember, which she described as being the entirety of her world. Occasionally, a woman would enter Zero Two's room to bring her food, and she thought that she was probably a stand-in for a mother. She would bring Zero Two food and pet her head. One day, she appeared for the last time with something that wasn't food, a picture book called The Beast and the Prince. Zero Two tried to eat and break it at first, and her mother flipped open the page, to which she was amazed by its bright colors and different shapes. Though it had words, she couldn't read them. Despite that, Zero Two described the book as her first pretty thing. Thanks to the picture book, Zero Two was sure the outside world surely had many more things to offer, though she added that she was half right and half wrong. One day, Zero Two was taken along for experiments. In the testing room, Dr. FRANXX was amazed how she developed such a human form. With Zero Two tethered, a laser was centered on her palm, and when it fired, she screamed in pain. Dr. FRANXX was amazed at how quickly her wound healed and how her skin regrew. After her testing, Zero Two was isolated in yet another room. In the room, she was seen struggling against an adult to get her picture book back, and she soon managed to take the book back, and the woman gave up. After that, Zero Two was put through even more painful experiments due to her special abilities. Since Hiro had witnessed Zero Two's suffering several times by then, he made up his mind that he was unwilling to watch her suffer anymore. When Hiro came to rescue her, scaling one of the trees near her cell, Zero Two had just gone through testing and was curled up on the floor, taking the picture book in her bosom as a sense of comfort. Hiro shattered her window with a searchlight, and although Zero Two was initially aggressive, she was moved by Hiro's tears and began crawling towards his outstretched hand. When they got out, however, the branch broke and they fell to the ground, causing Hiro to lose consciousness. Zero Two proceeded to carry Hiro through the snow, and she was amazed by the outside world. She noticed a pair of mice and chased after them. When Hiro regained consciousness, he saw her about to eat one of them. When he tried to stop her, she bit his hand, and he caressed her head to comfort her, which reminded her of her mother, and she let go. Hiro then realized that Zero Two couldn't understand him, but he introduced himself anyway. Though he asked for her name, she couldn't answer, less speak, but Hiro saw her code was 002. He thought of a name, first thinking Oni, and then 02, but he wasn't particularly fond of either of those names. However, when 02 began trying to say 02 continuously, Hiro thought he should have thought of a better name, but began to call her that himself. After that, the two continued and enjoyed their adventure together. Zero Two also noted that although she didn't understand his words, she knew his voice called to her, and she saw and learned new things with him, as well as walked with him. He also gave her some candy, to which Zero Two reacted fondly to. Now feeling comfortable with Hiro, Zero Two showed him her book, The Beast and the Prince. As Hiro began reading, a group of adults appeared, looking for them. The two hid, and Hiro promised to protect Zero Two. The two continued to flee from the adults and eventually ended up sitting under a mistletoe, with Hiro continuing reading the book. Hiro noted how sad the story was due to the fact that the Beast Princess and Prince couldn't be together since both weren't human. This made Hiro relate to his current situation, giving Zero Two a sad smile, to which she wryly smiled back at him. Soon after, Hiro said that they should get going, but Zero Two had scraped her knee and couldn't walk well. He searched for something to bandage it, but was forced to lick her blood instead. With Hiro kneeling before her, Zero Two confused his pose with the prince in the page mentioning marriage, proposing. As Zero Two questioned marriage, Hiro explained what it was and said that they would marry once they escaped. He told her he wanted to be with her forever too, and become her darling. She began crying tears of joy and hugged him close, now thinking she could have something beautiful with him. However, they were interrupted and cornered by a group of adults. Though Hiro tried to protect her, he was shot and fell to the ground bleeding. As Zero Two tried to resist from being captured by the adults, she saw Hiro, who had been shot, and cried and shouted out for her darling. After that, their memories were erased. However, Zero Two's memories couldn't be completely erased since the adults noted that there was some strong force protecting the memories she made with Hiro. In the aftermath, Zero Two did retain some vague memories from the meeting with Hiro, but she forgot about the person she made the memories with. She ate the picture book's pages and began speaking and acting like a human. Every once in a while, she snuck back to the tree, hoping to find Hiro waiting for her there. Since Zero Two's meeting with Hiro did leave a huge impression on her, she swore since that day to become human, since, if she were like him, they could always be together. To make her even more determined, she was also convinced into thinking that she could become human by killing Klaxosaurs by Papa and the others. Alone and Lonesome. Zero Two is seen on the carrier flight with Dr. FRANXX and Nana. She says she wants to take a bath and asks if there's an ocean in Plantation 13. Nana says there's no such thing and asks if she can just take a shower. Zero Two replies she's in the mood for a swim. She then licks her wrist and says she hates how she tastes. Upon landing, Zero Two runs off from the others and mocks them with a smirk and throws away her hat. Zero Two is later spotted by Hiro skinny dipping in a lake near Mistletoe. She disappears under the water surface, prompting Hiro to assume she's drowning and in need of rescue. Zero Two jumps out of the water with a live fish in her mouth. She spits out the fish and licks herself, believing that she'll taste salty, to her disappointment. Zero Two, in the nude, begins to converse with Hiro and thanks him for jumping in to save her. She then tickles him into the water and licks his cheek, remarking that he tastes dangerous, and she loves it. His taste, coupled with the fact that he wasn't afraid of her horns, prompts her to propose that he become her darling. Before Hiro can accept, Nana and 081 arrive to retrieve her. Hiro calls for her and asks her for her name. Dismissively, she questions if parasites even have names. She tells him her code is 002 and that everyone calls her 02. During the welcoming ceremony, a Klaxosaur appears and attacks the new FRANXX, damaging the garage. 02, piloting Strelizia, saves the parasites, notably Goro and Ichigo, from a would-be particle beam. Strelizia and the Klaxosaur battle, causing catastrophic damage to the outer wall of the plantation. Strelizia is overcome and is flung into a section of the plantation, crashing where Hiro had been viewing the battle. The lifeless body of 02's partner, 081, drops out of the derelict Strelizia. 02 emerges from the wreckage bloodied, and tells Hiro she'll have to pilot the Strelizia alone as she always has. Hiro reprimands her that if she pilots a FRANXX in her current state, she'll die. 02 claims she isn't afraid of death, and if she doesn't do it, countless more people will die from the Klaxosaur attack. Hiro declares that he'll ride with her. 02 asks if he's ready to die, which Hiro states he doesn't know, but he may very well be if he can't pilot a FRANXX. 02 sees Hiro's tears and extends her hand to him, mirroring their initial meeting at the lake. She tells him of how it's been a long time since she's seen a human cry, and how it makes her heart race. Hiro takes her hand and she pulls him into the cockpit, declaring him her darling, and they kiss. The kiss reactivates the Strelizia, and the Hiro 02 pairing unlocks its Iron Maiden form to the amazement of Dr. FRANXX and everyone else. Iron Maiden Strelizia overpowers the Klaxosaur and destroys its core, effectively killing the mechanical beast. In the aftermath, repairs are being done to the damage of the Klaxosaur attack, 02 carrying an unconscious Hiro alight from the now deactivated Iron Maiden Strelizia. Nana tells Squad 13 that 02 works directly under APE and possesses Klaxosaur blood. Ichigo realizes 02 is the girl from the rumors Zotome was talking about, in which her partners die after 3 rides. 02 gazes into the sunset and shoots Hiro a gleeful smile, saying, "I found you, my darling." What it means to connect. Zero Two unexpectedly visits Missile Teens have breakfast with Hiro, but much to the bemusement of the other parasites. She completely covers her meal in honey and proceeds to eat it with her bare hands to the disgust of all the parasites except Hiro. She's approached by Zotome in an attempt to hit on her while putting down Hiro. She begins to wipe her honeyed hands on his uniform, mortifying Zotome. Zero Two takes the pitcher of honey and starts sitting with Hiro and begins pouring honey all over his breakfast as well. When asked by Hiro as to whether or not he actually was able to activate and pilot Strelizia with her, she reassures him, stating that he was amazing and calls him darling, much to the shock of the other parasites and to Ichigo's chagrin in particular. Nana enters the room and informs them that Zero Two is on standby awaiting further orders from HQ. She also commands her to go back to her own table before Zero Two leaves with her. On the elevator, Nana criticizes her for running off. Zero Two antagonizes Nana by stating that she merely wanted to have breakfast with her darling. Nana orders her to avoid the parasites as they're nowhere ready for Zero Two's league. They arrive at the city and Zero Two remarks how she feels like she's suffocated there. Later in the hangar, Zero Two is confronted by Ichigo. Ichigo thanks Zero Two for saving their lives but warns her to stay away from Hiro so as not to get his hopes up and hurt him, declaring that she's not part of their squad. Zero Two approaches her and asks Ichigo what she is to her darling. Ichigo states that she's the leader of the squad. Zero Two begins to sniff her and lick her cheek, astonishing Ichigo. Zero Two says she tastes sweet, and that she likes her taste before gleefully leaving. During the discussion for Hiro's parasite promotion test, Zero Two volunteers to be his partner, him being her darling. Zero Two's proposal is met with harsh resistance by Ichigo, stating that she's not part of her squad and that if the test is merely to measure Hiro's aptitude, it would work with her. Having Zero Two participate would be unnecessary. Nana informs Zero Two that HQ hasn't authorized the use of the Strelizia, so Hiro will have to perform with one of his squadmates. Zero Two concedes, stating that her injuries haven't completely healed yet, and allows Ichigo to have Hiro, telling her to go for it this one time and to make sure to take care of her darling. After Ichigo's subsequent failure to properly pilot with Hiro, Zero Two is shown flipping her hair in the wind and triumphantly eating her lollipop while leaving the training grounds. Fighting Puppet. Zero Two is first shown waiting for Hiro to finish his solo training. After he finishes, he finds her asleep in the atrium. Once she wakes up, she takes him around the facility. However, due to Hiro's status, he has limited access to certain areas, whereas Zero Two has an S-Class ID, which implies unrestricted access. Thinking quickly, Zero Two takes Hiro's hand and they waltz through the doors, tricking the system. Upon gaining access, Zero Two leads Hiro to the inner city of Plantation 13. While Hiro is awestruck by the view, Zero Two overlooks the city melancholically. Hiro shoots her a grateful look, and she asks him why he's staring at her. Hiro replies that he's trying to think of a name for her. Zero Two says she's fine with just Zero Two, even though Hiro thinks it must be boring being called by her codename. She then jumps the rail and begins to walk out onto the ledge. She expresses her depressive view of the city, its inhabitants, and life. Zero Two then asks Hiro to run away with her, offering to get him out of the plantation. Before Hiro can answer, Zero Two pretends to fall but actually somersaults back to the safety of the balcony. She lightly jokes that she was kidding. Zero Two appears next when the underground mission against the Conrad-class Klaxosaur went awry. While the team celebrates their apparent victory, Zero Two shows up in a dark corner, remarking that it isn't over. All of a sudden, a swarm of similar Klaxosaurs and a giant version of the initial one begin to ambush the FRANXXs. As the situation grows increasingly dire, Zero Two consistently prods Nana into letting her ride with Hiro in order to save them. Nana persistently denies her, till Hiro submits that Zero Two ride with Mitsuru, the only available official Stamen, in order to save the squad. Zero Two is greatly disappointed in Hiro, giving him the silent treatment as she begrudgingly embarks partnered with Mitsuru. The pair then race to rescue the squad. Initially, Mitsuru pilots the Strelizia on par with Hiro, proposing that Zero Two take him as her official partner. Zero Two puts him to the test and goes all out, prompting Nana to initiate the retrieval of Strelizia. A bloody, deactivated Strelizia emerges in the aftermath. Zero Two emerges from the robot and gives Hiro a light wave and smile. Mitsuru doesn't emerge from the FRANXX. He's shown to have passed out in the cockpit, bloodied and broken on the brink of death. Zero Two says Mitsuru is not fit to be her darling, only Hiro is. Flip-flap. In the aftermath of Mitsuru's near-death experience, Zero Two is told to return to the front lines by Nana on Papa's orders, and the Strelizia is grounded. Much to Zero Two's dismay, she remarks all the parasites are nothing but an annoyance and will die sooner or later anyway. Nana counters they're still her fellow parasite comrades, which Zero Two scoffs. Hachi states she's special, which offends Zero Two because she assumes he means about her not being human, but he elaborates that he meant her abilities. Zero Two looks at Strelizia in the docking lounge as the plantation goes into mobile mode. Nearby, Hiro sees her and hides. However, Zero Two realizes he's there, but she simply walks away. Afterwards, she finds Hiro in the bathroom as he takes a bath and she walks into the bathtub, cornering him against the wall. She asks him to run away with her and leave his weakling comrades. Her mood dampens by Hiro's visible fear of her as he stares at her horns and gulps. She asks him if he's like everyone else, if he thinks she's a monster. Before he can reply, the alarm goes off. A giant centipede-like razor Klaxosaur attacks the carrier sent to acquire Zero Two. Plantation 13's parasites are deployed to combat it, only to be ambushed seemingly by another Klaxosaur. Zero Two and Hiro change into their suits and rush into the Situation Room when Nana tells her that it won't change her decision, that the Strelizia is not authorized to fly. Zero Two asks why there's an assault ship here, much to Hiro's surprise. At this point, armed security personnel arrive to collect Zero Two, as Papa has ordered her to return with Strelizia to the front lines by any means necessary. Zero Two gives a long goodbye to Hiro, remarking about how she felt like things could work out too, and that she wanted to be with him. In lieu of a kiss, Zero Two pokes his forehead with her horns and departs with the soldiers. While being escorted by the guards to the carrier, Hiro catches up to her, however unable to reach her due to the restriction system. Hiro begins to shout out to her and apologize for his prior hesitation in the bath. Hiro explains that his fear wasn't of her inhumanity, but a lack of his own resolve. Hiro confesses that he doesn't care about riding the FRANXX and that he just wants to ride with Zero Two, begging her not to go. Zero Two pauses in the face of his confession. She then does a backflip, disarming one guard and using his rifle to crack the glass barrier above Hiro. She performs an aerial flip, breaking through the glass to reach Hiro. Now reunited with a bashful Hiro, she coaxes him to reaffirm his confession, asking him, "You want to ride me, huh?" Which is so wrong. A lot of this is so wrong, but we all knew that when we were watching Darling in the FRANXX. Anyway, Hiro affirms that he does, and Zero Two asks him to say it one more time. Zero Two takes Hiro in her arms, and they assume their waltzed pose in order to pass the security restrictions and break through to the Strelizia. Once in the cockpit, Nana orders them over the comm to get out, and that they don't have the permission to launch. Zero Two declares she's going out with her darling, and cuts Nana off mid-sentence. Hiro pauses due to his anxiety of failing to pilot a FRANXX, yet Zero Two reassures him that he can do it, later rephrasing it to "they can do this." Now revitalized by Zero Two's encouragement, they pair up and the Strelizia destroys the carrier and takes to the skies, en route to rescue the parasites once again. Realizing that the Klaxosaur is too long and big, the squad comes up with a strategy. By restraining it and opening it up, Strelizia will be able to go inside and reach the core. The other FRANXX do this, with Delphinium and Chlorophytum opening its mouth, whereas Ganista and Argentea hold its body down. Strelizia enters through its mouth and gives Delphinium, Ichigo, a smirk, which catches Ichigo off guard momentarily. Strelizia travels inside the Klaxosaur and destroys the core as soon as Strelizia reaches the end of the Klaxosaur. Your Thorn, my badge. Zero Two is seen waiting for Hiro so that they can have breakfast together. She insists on sitting beside Hiro at Futoshi's expense, thereby forcing Futoshi to sit at the girls' table for Kokoro's invitation. While Ichigo gives the morning prayer, Zero Two's hard at work slathering her entire breakfast, and Hiro's, with honey. She then begins feeding Hiro to the disgust of Goro and the jealousy of Zorome. Futoshi and Kokoro imitate them while Ichigo silently ponders into her teacup. After breakfast, Hiro gives Zero Two a tour of the birdcage and their life as parasites. Zero Two then divulges that she'll soon be living there too, which her announcement causes displeasure among the parasites, especially from Ichigo, who immediately confronts Nana about this development. Ichigo accepts her stay as the will of Papa, then personally sees Zero Two to her accommodations. Ichigo prepares Zero Two's room in the attic, much to Zero Two's disappointment that Ichigo won't let her share a room with Hiro. Ichigo lays down the rules, making Zero Two call her bossy. During the joint briefing between Plantations 13 and 26, Hachi informs them that Zero Two and the Strelizia will guard the main pipeline during the kissing. The plan is met with strong opposition by the leader of the Plantation 26 parasites. He recounts an operation from 2 years prior with Zero Two and his parasites. He denounces Zero Two as reckless and shows no concern for others. He even divulges that she's the reason his previous partner is dead. Zero Two utters "weaklings die, big deal." 090 is about to attack Zero Two until Hiro intervenes and defends her honor, thus diffusing the situation. Later that night, Goro spots Ichigo and Zero Two sneaking out at midnight. Apparently, Ichigo pulled Zero Two aside to ensure she stay in line for the upcoming mission. Zero Two dismisses her for being bossy again and begins to leave. Ichigo grabs her wrist and begins to beg Zero Two not to push Hiro too hard. Ripping herself from Ichigo's grasp, Zero Two responds that Darling said that he wanted to ride with her. Ichigo continues to beg her not to put a heavy burden on Hiro. Zero Two questions Ichigo if she wants Hiro and reminds her that she tried to ride with him and that they didn't work. Ichigo exclaims to leave her out of it. Zero Two tells her that she should stay out of it. Ichigo asks if she's trying to suck him dry, which, god, so fucking horny. Zero Two declares Darling belongs to me. An agitated Ichigo warns her that Hiro could die. Zero Two brushes it off, saying that he could, and if he did, then he wouldn't have amounted to much. Angered and frustrated, Ichigo calls her heartless and inhuman. She then slaps Zero Two hard, so hard that it damages her headband, knocking it off. Zero Two becomes enraged. Her eyes and horns start to glow a malevolent red. The red-eyed Zero Two, glaring at Ichigo, questions her on what it means to be human. Frightened by the being before her, Ichigo runs back to the birdcage in tears, and it starts to rain. Zero Two is calmed by the feeling of the rainfall. The next morning, Hiro goes outside and approaches a soaked Zero Two by the lake. It's implied she spent the rest of the night out in the rain. Zero Two tells him that everything smells nice after it rains. Zero Two reminisces of the time they first met. Hiro thanks her, stating that the reason he's still there is because of her, and that she gave him the chance to pilot a FRANXX. Zero Two unzips his uniform, revealing a blue tumor. Zero Two asks him if it hurts, and if he wants to walk away from being her partner. Hiro admits that it hurts, but confirms that he'll ride with her. Zero Two smiles and begins to joyfully laugh and dance, having found someone willing to give his life for her. Darling in the FRANXX. On the dawn of the mission, Hiro spots Zero Two exiting the pistol changing room. She glances back at him, but doesn't approach as Ichigo's present. Hiro quickly ends his conversation with Ichigo and meets up with Zero Two. She asks him if he's ready, and he affirms he is. During the defense of the kissing, Zero Two and Hiro oversee the battle while guarding the main pipeline, much to her boredom. Zero Two remarks that the Plantation 13 Parasite's tactics are all over the place, and that they're barely hanging in there, as they're being overwhelmed by 4 Conrad-class Klaxosaurs, in contrast to the other squad's calculated and efficient method of combat. Zero Two shoots the question back at an unsure Hiro, who shrugs and states it's to protect Papa and all the adults in the plantations. Zero Two remarks his answer is lame. Hiro proposes that if the squad needs their help, they should move out, to which Zero Two agrees. Zero Two and Hiro charge into battle and begin killing the Klaxosaurs in bundles. Ichigo tells Strelizia to go back, but Zero Two ignores her. 090 also tells Zero Two to return to her position, but as Zero Two doesn't reply, Hiro says that they're only helping their teammates. Target Beta, initially a massive cube Klaxosaur with horns, transforms into a humanoid form and begins its advance to the pipeline. Hiro's health deteriorates as a result of clearing the minor Klaxosaurs. Zero Two checks in on him, reminding him that Target Beta is a real threat. Once the parasites pin down Target Beta, the Strelizia flies into the air. Hiro aims to finish it in one blow with a downwards thrust as its final act. The attack was seemingly successful as Target Beta collapses. However, Target Beta punches Strelizia off and quickly reassembles itself once again, this time into a battering ram prepared to attack Strelizia. Then, Strelizia deactivates, showing Hiro has died at the cost of the last strike. The Strelizia takes the full brunt of Target Beta's attack, sending it crashing into the main pipeline. With the link between Zero Two and Hiro now disconnected, Strelizia enters Stampede form, much to the horror of his squadmates. She attempts to retaliate, however futile, and is embedded in the pipeline as Target Beta continually rams it. Zero Two devolves into a primal state as she desperately tries to defend against the unending attack. Hiro miraculously revives, and the traces of the tumor rapidly disappear. She's calmed by Hiro with an embrace, declaring he's her partner and he won't leave her alone. The Strelizia returns to its Iron Maiden form and knocks down Target Beta, rekindling the hope and amazement of everyone, especially Dr. FRANXX. Squad 13 repeats the earlier maneuver, but with an upward strike. The attack shoots Target Beta into the sky as wings of light appear and impale it, finally putting an end to the gargantuan. In the aftermath, a fatigued Zero Two is carried by Hiro out of Strelizia this time. She hears Hiro tell her that he wants to be her wings and he'll be fine afterwards. Standing apart from the celebration, Zero Two watches him. She turns to the Strelizia, contemplating that she has to kill more and more Klaxosaurs. Shooting Star Moratorium. Zero Two tells Dr. FRANXX that they didn't have to come all the way. Nana introduces Hiro to Dr. FRANXX, the creator of the FRANXX. She begins to introduce the boy, but he stops her. He approaches Hiro and says that he's the first person to survive Zero Two. He says that he has an interest in them. Hachi tells the doctor that Strelizia and Code 002 are transferred into Plantation 13's purview. He waves at him and says that the geezers already told him. When Hachi announces that they're officially partners, 02 hugs Hiro. Dr. FRANXX tells Hiro not to let him consume his emotions if he wants to always be her partner. Otherwise, he'll suffer. Later, after the successful kissing of Plantation 26, Squad 13 is given a special vacation. 02, along with the majority of the other children, are excited to be at the ocean. She pulls Hiro to the water, she splashes him, and they laugh together. Hiro follows 02 into the water, and the three boys begin watching them. She notes how nice it feels to swim in the ocean. Hiro seems embarrassed when he looks at her, and she asks what's wrong. He says she looks good, but he can't look her in the eyes. She thanks him for all he did for her. 02 looks like she's about to kiss Hiro, but she instead licks his cheek. She teasingly asks what he was expecting. She says that a kiss is a declaration that the other person belongs to you, and you should only kiss the person you love. She asks if he maybe kissed someone else. Before he can answer, Goro, Zorome, and Futoshi pull Hiro under the water, leaving her alone in the water. Mitsuru tells the group that he found something strange and leads the group through a thin pass. 02 walks along at the back of the group through the pass and the forest path before being brought to what appears to be a city. Zorome comments that it's nothing like the cities that adults live in. Kokoro asks if people live there, and Mitsuru replies that he's never heard of anyone living outside the plantations. Ichigo comes to a bookstore where she sees a poster featuring a kissing couple. She thinks of her and Hiro's kiss and touches her lip. 02 suddenly says behind her that she did it with Hiro. Ichigo is startled and asks her what she means. She answers, kiss, and says that she probably isn't ready for it yet. Ichigo says that she has to. 02 asks with who, and says that it only should be shared with a special someone. She asks if that person was special to her. Before she can answer, Goro calls her and he and Hiro wave them over. They walk back to the rest of the group and Miku says that she's exhausted. Kokoro agrees. Zorome wonders about the city and Ikuno says that they can be sure that it was part of civilization. Goro asks if people lived there in the past. 02 answers that they abandoned it and that humans used to live on the surface. She says that there are tons of places like that around the world. Back at the beach, food has been delivered. They all begin eating, and Goro hands 02 a shish kebab. She tells Hiro that she's going to go swimming before running off to the sea. Ichigo stands and officially welcomes him and 02 to the squad. 02 watches this from the water. That night, while everyone but Hiro and Ichigo are asleep, 02 watches the shooting stars from a rock. Boys x girls. As the parasites are finding a Klaxosaur, it spews goo. It leaks into the cockpit and melts the girls' parasite suits. Though the boys begin spacing out, they don't tell the girls and they finish off the Klaxosaur. Hiro finally tells 02 and the rest of the girls realize what's happened. The girls cover themselves with a towel and glare at their partners. Besides 02, who doesn't seem to mind. When Hiro tries to defuse the situation, he says that 02 said it's better that parasites are a bit pervy, which she confirms. This annoys the girls further. As a result, the girls split the house, which 02 finds very strange, but upon seeing Hiro, she ignores the split and spends time close to him. As the boys blocked off the kitchen, 02 walks in and Miku attempts to follow her, but the other girls pull her back. In the yard, she plays with a ball as Hiro says that everyone's gotten too stubborn and they need to do something. But she thinks the opposite and they need to spice it up a bit. 02 approaches the girls and licks Ikuno and says she tastes a secret and begins to walk away, but is halted by Miku. In one of the girls' bedrooms, she was asked by Miku whose side she's on. She says that they're just playing around, but Ichigo says they're serious. Hearing that, 02 decides to play along. She changes the girls' only bath sign to allow boys, and when they enter naked, the girls are already bathing. Again, another fucking horny episode. Then 02 runs out with the clothes and Hiro chases her, asking how she could do that to them. She says because they're fighting, and leads them on a chase throughout the house. They meet on the roof where Hiro begins laughing after she throws their clothes in the air, laughing and calling Hiro a pervert. Hiro starts laughing and asks why she did it. She says she wanted to take part in a human fight and asks him if she looks human to him now, before falling from the roof. As Hiro runs to try to help her, her reflexes allow her to safely land to the ground and give Hiro a smile as they look at each other. And yet, she and the others are scolded by Nana and Hachi after they get dressed. In the girls' room, 02 is giddy at how naughty and rebellious the incident was. The girls want an explanation. 02 tells them if they half-ass things, they'll end up adults. She tells them to say what they want because they'll all die sooner or later before leaving. 02 is among the parasites when they find Miku. When they wonder what the room is, 02 says that it's probably one of the rooms the former Squad 13 used. Zorome questions what happened, and 02 says they were obviously wiped out. Later on, Zorome and Miku are seen bickering before they enter their FRANXX. Hiro says he wants to get to know Zero Two better. She tells him to grab on and never let go of her. Triangle Bomb. At the beginning of the episode, the members of Squad 13, with the exception of Zero Two, receive presents from Papa. When she sees Hiro's requested present is a book, Zero Two's attention is riveted, and she asks if it's a picture book. When he replies in the negative, Zero Two is shown to have a rather disappointed face. Later that morning, Hiro presents her with an item that had once belonged to his former and likely deceased partner, Naomi, a silver-finished hand mirror. He explains that he noticed Papa had given her nothing, and so as a result, decided to make sure she also has a gift. Zero Two reacts by putting her arms around Hiro, thanking him for thinking of her. As Squad 13 is sent on a mission against an airborne Gutenberg-class Klaxosaur, Goro ejects Ichigo out of Delphinium to prevent her from perhaps being killed by the enemy's self-inflicted explosions. When the squad later returns to their sortie, Zero Two assists Ichigo in rescuing Goro by carrying her in Strelizia's hand, before slipping Squad 13's leader into the Klaxosaur through an exhaust vent. The City of Eternity. She and Squad 13 return to the plantation after a battle. As Hiro exits Strelizia, he notices she doesn't get out and looks gloomy. He asks if something's wrong and she says no. Nana calls the parasites down because she has some news for them. Nana informs the parasites that Papa has decided to award them medals for their achievements, meaning that they'll be allowed into the city. While the parasites are excited, Zero Two is indifferent and starts walking away. Nana stops her to tell her that it's perfect timing to arrange Zero Two to undergo testing. Zero Two retorts she hates those tests as they make her feel loopy afterwards, and she says she's fine before leaving. During the ceremony, the mayor thanks Zero Two, but she ignores him. The squad is allowed to venture through the city. The others marvel at the city, but Zero Two doesn't care, as she tells Hiro how lifeless the city is. Partner Shuffle. She accompanies Squad 13 to a meeting where Nana and Hachi report the squad's killing count has greatly increased, but Chlorophytum's power capacity has been dropped. The squad later guards a drilling facility. Due to Mitsuru and Ikuno's incompatibility, Nana recommends a partner shuffle. Hiro tries to discuss this with Zero Two, but she gives him the silent treatment. He asks her to talk to him so he can understand her more, but she puts his hand over his mouth. She says they can understand each other just fine while piloting Strelizia, and otherwise is an annoyance before she walks away. During a battle against a Gutenberg Klaxosaur, Zero Two ignores commands from Ichigo and starts attacking the Klaxosaur. Hiro tries to hold her back, and she gets angry at him for this. He pleads for her to calm down. When Janissa is briefly knocked down, Strelizia provides backup until Kokoro and Mitsuru reconnect and help Strelizia kill the Klaxosaur. Zero Two later tells Hiro not to worry about the others because the two of them will be together forever, and hugs him from behind. The garden where it all began. Zero Two and Squad 13 returns to the garden to undergo tests. She's anxious and scours throughout the library looking for a picture book. She begins biting her nails and Hiro asks her what's wrong. She corners him against the wall and asks him to kiss her, and leans into him. However, she holds back when he notices her canines and coldly turns away. At the lab, Hachi tells Zero Two that she'll undergo thorough tests, but she asks for a pass. Nana says they can keep putting it off. The squad is greeted by the Nines, and Alpha asks her if she came for maintenance, but she ignores him. She later fights against a group of soldiers who try to take her into the lab. One tranquilizes her, and they hold her down. A Klaxosaur appears near the garden, and the squad is sent to sortie. Zero Two completely ignores orders and brutally kills it. She keeps stabbing the Klaxosaur and repeatedly screams for it to die, shocking Hiro and the others. The next day, Zero Two begins destroying every mirror in Mistletoe, and the mirror Hiro gave her as a gift as well. The squad later goes against another Klaxosaur, but when Zero Two again starts to lose control, Hiro tries restraining her. She fights back, screaming he's merely her fodder, and she's going to become human so she can meet with her darling from before. Their minds intersect, and she begins strangling Hiro, who starts to see her memories. The Beast and the Prince. Hiro connects deeply with the consciousness of Zero Two and catches a glimpse of her memories that she retained but he forgot from their childhood. Hiro sees how Zero Two endured torturous experiments from Dr. FRANXX and received a picture book called The Beast and the Prince, which was her one source of comfort from a caretaker. Zero Two and Hiro caught their first glimpse of each other when she was being dragged into the lab, where she experienced painful experiments of a laser blowing a hole through her hand. A caretaker tries to take her book from her, but Zero Two fought back until the woman gave up. After suffering from electroshock treatment, Hiro helped her escape by breaking the window in her room, and Zero Two notes that that was her first time experiencing the outside world, and the environment confused her, as it was different. She tried eating a mouse and impulsively bit Hiro's hand when he tried to stop her, but he soon realized she didn't understand what he was saying. He tried thinking of a name for her. His first choice was Oni, but then thought Zero Two, although he said it wasn't good either. She tried pronouncing Zero Two, but couldn't because of her speech impairment. Hiro then suggested they go somewhere very far. Zero Two narrates she didn't understand his words but knew his voice called to her. She saw things with him and walked with him, and all the moments they shared were fun. She was given a piece of candy by Hiro which delighted her. Feeling comfortable around him, she showed him the picture book before they're forced to hide from some guards who were tracking them. The two later sat in front of a tree while Hiro read the book, which he noted was sad because the beast and the prince couldn't get married. Zero Two was curious about what marry meant, and he explained it was when two people who loved each other make a vow to be together forever. However, he thought it would mean the two would have to be human. She smiled at him, and Hiro suggested they keep walking, but noticed she had a cut in her knee. He was surprised to see blue blood from her wound, and licked it. She compared his knee position to a proposal based on the wedding page, and asked Hiro if this is marriage. He said once they get out of here, because he wanted to be with her forever too, and become her darling. She began crying and hugged Hiro to what Zero Two now believed were tears of joy. The two realized they were sitting in front of a mistletoe tree, but were then found by a group of soldiers who knocked Hiro unconscious and grabbed Zero Two. Since then, she's vowed to become human no matter what, because she always believed she could do anything with him. After a collision with Delphinium and hearing Ichigo's words, Zero Two agrees, but stops herself when Hiro mutters she was the girl with the picture book from before, as she looks back at him with tears in her eyes. Punishment and confession. Zero Two and Hiro realize they knew each other as children. She catches him before he collapses and asks if he's her darling from her childhood, and is horrified thinking of what she had done. Ichigo suddenly interrupts them and throws her off of him and into Goro. He asks if she's alright as Ichigo tries to revive Hiro. When they return to the docking facility, Hiro's taken for treatment. Zero Two realizes what Hiro meant when he said he wanted to understand her better. Hachi announced they must neutralize every Klaxosaur inhabiting Grand Crevice. Nana says it's a joint operation with the Nines and FRANXX Squad from each plantation. He says that Squad 13's scheduled to be part of the 6th wave. Nana says it'll be their most difficult mission, and Ichigo raises her hand. She asks that Zero Two is removed from Squad 13 as of that mission, and if not, Squad 13 will not participate in the operation. Nana says she was set to return to the Nines as of that mission anyway. Zero Two wants to see Hiro, so she protests, but the parasites stop her from seeing him. When Hiro gets up, he's stopped by Miku. Zero Two is also guarded and prevented from leaving her room. She tells them that Zero Two is returning to the Nines the next night. Zero Two remembers what Ichigo said and thinks she knew she could never be human. She breaks out of her room as Ichigo returns and roughly throws Goro against a window. However, she's scolded by Ichigo and asks if she wants to lie to him again. She says she's wrong and just wants to talk to him. Goro tells Ichigo to let her see him, and Kokoro agrees, stating that it's sad to see them apart. Dora says that she can meet him, but they're all going to be there. When they enter the room, it's empty. Hiro had used the knife to make a rope out of the curtains. He then tied the knife to it and climbed up the stairs, escaping containment. Zero Two becomes enraged and says that they tricked her. Hiro unknowingly goes to Zero Two's room. He asks through the door if she knew about their past. He opens the door to find the room destroyed. He returns to the hospital to find all his teammates unconscious and her attacking Ichigo. Zero Two, with a devious grin, invites Hiro to talk lots and lots. Hiro scolds her for being such a monster. She realizes the damage she'd done to them. Zero Two leaves the plantation as the other parasites watch her leave silently. She passes by Hiro without saying anything. 9 Alpha greets Zero Two and presents her with the stamens that Dr. FRANXX brought for her. Zero Two's ship takes off. The bird that shares wings. Her face is deathly pale, her eyes blood red, and her horns long enough to touch the ceiling. Hiro tries to connect to Zero Two, but he gets no response. He holds her horns and asks to be taken to her, seeing her memories. She can't remember things, but begins to when she recognizes familiar actions. She licks her wounds in a similar way. Seeing her book, Zero Two begins eating it. She learns the word boku, and Zero Two, and darling. She remembers Hiro getting attacked and begins crying. Zero Two's horns break and Hiro hugs her. She pushes him away and tells him not to look at her because of how she used him. He says that it doesn't matter anymore. She cries out that she called him fodder and how he can never forgive her. He cries that he called her a monster and hugs her, saying they're even. She says she's a monster, but Hiro says no, and they need to talk things out, as their future is ahead of them, and they have the chance to see the world when they didn't back then. Hiro kisses her as they both begin to give way to their emotions. Through their tears of joy, Strelizia emerges, with an inverted color scheme. She then completely annihilates the super Lehman-class Klaxosaur threatening Plantation 13, and the two confess their love for each other while doing so. After killing the Klaxosaur, the Nines open the door of the Grand Crevice, and the smoke and dust clear in the sky. Strelizia taxes at the blue sky, with Hiro and Zero Two narrating Zero Two's debut narrative of the Gion. Inside the mountain Klaxosaur, they find that its core is a collective mass of cores. A large hand suddenly shoots up from the ground. 9 Alpha laughs and says that it reacted quickly. It crushes the plantation, leaving behind a pile of debris. Squad 13, and Missile Team for that matter, were lucky enough to still be standing as they stood between the hand's digits. Days of our lives. A month passes and the squad is on standby for their next mission. In her room, Zero Two happily files her horns as she looks at herself using Naomi's mirror. Zero Two summons everyone else as it's time for breakfast by hitting a frying pan with a ladle. Futoshi covers his ears, and Kokoro tells Miku that she's on messenger duty. Zero Two finds Hiro and Mitsuru inspecting the water of a lake and tells them breakfast's ready. While everyone preps for breakfast, Ikuno enters and offers to help, but Ichigo says that it's fine and asks her if her fever went down. Zero Two places her forehead on Ikuno and says that she's 36.7 degrees, a normal body temperature, but tells her not to push herself. They pray for Papa before they eat, though Zero Two eats anyway. She lists off the chores, and Miku, smiling, notes that she's meticulous. Ichigo also smiles and agrees. Hiro and Zero Two walk together. Hiro says that Goro must have gotten child fever last week. Zero Two curiously looks at a plant. He explains that they're Sakura buds, including that they're a really pretty color, like her hair. She giggles and says she wants to see them. He asks how she felt about their lives, and she says they're having fun and would like to live like that forever. He scooches closer to her and is about to hold her hand, but she suddenly remembers that she was supposed to go bathing with the other pistols, telling him not to peek. The girls bathe in the river. Miku asks if they've seen Mitsuru's hair as she washes Zero Two's hair. Ikuno says that he looked pretty good. Zero Two sees a fish and tries to get it, but Miku stops her. Miku pours water on her head and asks if they always talk about corny stuff. She tackles her, pushing her into the water. When she says that she'll wash hers, she notices that she has gray hair. Miku wonders what's wrong, but Zero Two playfully tackles her again. The parasites meet in their living room, and Ichigo says that they have 5 sources they can use for drinking water. Mitsuru says that 2 of them are only usable with filtering. Ikuno asks if they can repair the circulation system themselves. Hiro says that Missile Team doesn't have the equipment. Futoshi says that their access to the elevator is restricted too. Zotome asks why they don't send a letter to Papa and ask him to fix it. Goro says that he doesn't think there'd be a point, and the parasites sadly reflect on their vulnerability, so Zero Two says they should cook their own food. The others agree, and Ichigo welcomes Hiro, Goro, and Zero Two back from fishing. Zotome and the rest are impressed with the 11 fish that she caught. Goro caught 9, and Hiro awkwardly smiled and scratched his head, saying he didn't catch any. Zero Two says she'll teach him later. And the others want to try fishing as well. Goro asks Ichigo how she is, and she says that the mood's really changed. So she happily watches as Zero Two tells the rest how to fish. Ichigo says that Hiro was right about her being a normal girl, and she says she wants what's best for her and Hiro. That night, Kokoro and Miku sleep together, while Zero Two draws pictures of the book she and Hiro read together. When Hiro says that it's a sad story, she says that it was her first pretty thing. She met him and wanted to have something beautiful with him. She realizes now what it means to be human, and they embrace. As she lays out her drawings for her picture book, she's about to draw on a piece of paper until she hears a Klaxosaur scream from the Grand Crevice. Eden. Ikuno holds a mirror for Zero Two as she files her horns. She asks if it hurts, and she says, not a bit at all. When she finishes, she tells Miku. She presents a flower headband and places it on her head. Zero Two asks what it looks like, and Miku says perfect and that Hiro would love it. Zotome suddenly runs up and says there's a problem. The Nines later arrive in Missile Team on Papa's orders. 9 Alpha and Zero Two have a private chat in the woods. Smiling, 9 Alpha asks how long she's going to play human since she'll never be the same as them. Though they're unique, they're imperfect, unlike she and the other Nines. She tells him not to call her Iota, but Zero Two. He asks if she's throwing away the Special Forces codename that Papa gave her. She says that her darling gave it to her, and it's important. He begins laughing at her as she walks away, and wishes her luck, again calling her Iota. Zero Two looks at the flame of a candle in her room when Hiro calls out to her. She asks about her flower headband. She says that Miku made it for her. She shyly tells him not to stare, but says it's okay after he compliments her. Zero Two pushes his bangs back to reveal small blue horns poking through his forehead. She says that they'd grown bigger. She thinks that they must be because he rode with her, or because he drank her blood. She sadly says that she drastically altered his destiny. He leans in and places his horns against hers. They kiss and rest their foreheads against each other. Blushing, Hiro says that it makes him happy to be more similar to her. She tells him that she ate her old picture book when they were trying to erase her memories, and she says that she started wanting to become human because she wanted to see him again and was told that she could do so by killing Klaxosaurs, and yet realizes she shouldn't have believed them. Hiro asks if Papa and the rest told her, but she doesn't answer. She asks that he show her the picture he drew. He refuses, so she playfully snatches it from him. She finds that he crudely drew a picture of a king. She begins laughing, and he covers his face in embarrassment. Zero Two says that she approves, and she loves it as she holds it against her chest. The next day, she sees that 9 Alpha had been poking around, and that conflict had arose as he interrogates Kokoro on the childbirth book. A harsh exchange of words soon followed, with Ikuno slapping 9 Alpha. Afterwards, upon hearing Kokoro's words, Zero Two was amazed by humans because they were to leave a mark, which was something she couldn't do, and as well as decide their own fates. She later shows Hiro her drawing of a bride. When the Sakura blooms, Hiro explains to the parasites that he wants to have a wedding. As they don't know what it is, Hiro explains that it was a ceremony where 2 people would make a vow together. Miku asks who will get married. Hiro says Kokoro and Mitsuru. Kokoro says that Hiro told him about it, and it sounded beautiful. Mitsuru says they decided to do it before leaving. Goro, Miku, and Zorome voice their support. Though they stop to check on Futoshi, he claims that he wants to play the priest so he can be right beside Kokoro and Mitsuru to congratulate them. Kokoro thanks him. Zero Two shows Kokoro a drawing of a wedding dress. Kokoro asks what material they used to make it. Miku and Ichigo collect curtains to do so. Ichigo looks around the abandoned room that the couple slept in and notices a camera. Mitsuru and Goro make rings for the wedding, and Mitsuru explains what they're for. When Goro says that Kokoro will love it, Mitsuru blushes and says he hopes so. The parasites paint the side of the house. Ichigo brings Ikuno out, and they all pose for a picture. Zero Two looks at her mirror and headband. She's about to draw something, but stops and looks at the drawings for her book. She hears screaming and a black hole appear in the ground. Countless statements such as 081 climb out of the hole and pull her. The large hand is about to strike her, but she's woken up by Hiro. Hiro asks if she's okay, and she shakes in his chest. She smiles and says she dozed off. Hiro says her book's almost complete, and she smiles and says she'll show it to him when she's done. Zero Two and Hiro walk through the Sakura. Zero Two wears a formal pistol outfit that Kokoro lent her, and Hiro compliments her. She asks if he remembers their promise to marry, and he says he does. Afterwards, they spin around in the petals. As the others wait outside, Mitsuru paces at the bottom of the stairs, and Kokoro comes down in her wedding dress. Mitsuru looks at her, but becomes embarrassed and looks away. She takes his hand and says they'll find happiness together. Ikuno runs down the stairs and gives them each flowers, and then opens the doors. Zorome asks if they ring the bells now, and Biku says yes. The parasites ring their bell as Mitsuru and Kokoro walk together, as well as throwing petals. Futoshi cries. Naturally, because, he had a thing for Kokoro. Hachi watches the wedding from the control room, but an ape assault ship appears. Alpha greets him from the monitor, and Hachi asks who authorized them. Alpha answers that Papa did. Hachi asks them if they're going to force them into the Parasite Camp's reindoctrination program when Squad 13 is exempt from it. Alpha says just 2 of them. Alpha tells him to just sit there and watch, like usual. Futoshi tells the couple to exchange rings. After they do, Futoshi tells them to kiss. Before they can, they're interrupted by APE SP, who tell them to freeze. When Zorome questions them, he's hit with a gun. Futoshi stands in front of them and tells them to run. They do, but they're stopped by the 9s. Alpha tells them that Papa said they were dangerous and need to be reindoctrinated. Zero Two leaps forward to protect them. Alpha then asks her if she's still playing human, because it's really getting embarrassing. She calls him the embarrassment and tries to attack him, but he jumps away. The other 9s begin attacking her as well. They hold her down, and Alpha tells her that she mustn't defy Papa. SB takes the couple and tear them from each other. Hachi comes down the steps and watches. The parasites sit sadly around the yard. Hiro thinks that it's like the garden, and they're not allowed any happiness. As they pack, Hiro wonders where they were taken, and if they'll come back. The cargo ship comes and picks them up. At the bird's nest, Ikuno says that the parasites are being summoned in order. Miku says that it reminds her of Garden. The Stamen talk about how it's been weeks since their last mission. Ichigo gets a message, and they go to the door. Kokoro and Mitsuru walk through. Though they still have their rings, they don't remember the wedding or each other. Zero Two tells Hiro that their memories have been altered, just like what happened to them in the past. Hachi watches them as well. Inhumanity. Hiro walks up and Ichigo asks about Zero Two. He says she just needs some final tune-ups. He tells the group that he's thinking of directly asking Papa to return them to normal. Looking at his robotic hand, Hiro asks that Mitsuru and Kokoro's memories be returned. Papa refuses and says that they remove the unnecessary information and that there's no way to return them. The rest of the parasites are distressed, and the vice chairman says that what they're doing is a severe breach of protocol and would normally be punished, but they'll let it off with a mere mention on their record. He tells them to return to their waiting quarters. Futoshi demands that they apologize. Zorome asks how many Klaxosaurs they have to kill before they can become adults. They don't answer, and Zorome asks what they're living for. Hiro says that they took away Zero Two and his precious memories, as well as Kokoro and Mitsuru's. He says they can't see him as their Papa, and to set them free once the battle's over. Papa agrees, as long as they fulfill their duties in the next mission. Then they hang up. Dr. FRANXX tells them to show whether they can become real humans. Hiro says he saw him in Zero Two's memories, and that he can't forgive him before walking out. Zero Two sits outside. He stares at her horns, and she calls him a pervert. He smiles and tells her that they made their decision. He holds out his hand, and they walk away. The doctor watches them walk away, holding hands. A new world. Gorilla says that they don't need to worry, and Baboon says that that's why they modified it for so long. Another says that they're implanting Strelizia in Star Entity's core. Papa says to Zero Two that it's for that purpose that they raised her. She's unimpressed. But Hiro grabs her hand and asks what happens after that. He says that the future will belong to humanity if they defeat the Klaxosaurs. He says they won't call him Papa anymore, and they'll control their own destiny. As Squad 13 eats together, Futoshi tells Goro that both Kokoro and Mitsuru took off their rings. Goro's surprised he noticed and begins to ask if he's not over her, but stops and apologizes. Kokoro suddenly spills her water and runs to the bathroom to throw up. On D-Day at the bird nest, Vice Chairman says that APE has always desired peace and prosperity for mankind. Marmoset tells them to offer all of themselves. Papa says that they will finally prevail. 9 Alpha watches the squad and becomes annoyed when he sees Zero Two yawn. After the assembly, the 9s mock Squad 13. Zero Two steps forward and says they're all stronger than them since they all have their eyes on the future. This angers 9 Alpha, and he says that Papa only treats them differently because they're his tools before they all walk away. The squad's thankful to Zero Two, but are interrupted by a siren. An announcer says that a Klaxosaur pack is headed towards Grand Crevice. The parasites all head out. Kokoro rubs her finger, and Mitsuru says they were partners, so they should be able to connect. At the Grand Crevice ruins, the FRANXX attack the Klaxosaur. When Mitsuru compliments Kokoro, he has a pain in his head when saying her name. Janissa struggles, and Kokoro gets the same pain when saying Mitsuru. Hiro, Zero Two, Dr. FRANXX, and Hachi go down an elevator with Strelizia. Hiro and Zero Two discuss their plans, and Zero Two says she doesn't care as long as they're together. She's about to say something about the last page of the book, but stops herself. They kiss as they promise to be together forever. They reach the bottom of Grand Crevice. Zero Two hears something coming, and they leave. One of the snake Klaxosaur breaks through the wall, and 001, the princess of all Klaxosaurs, says she won't allow them to do what they wish with their child. Dr. FRANXX asks if she's there to take back Star Entity, but he says she can't since she's the last of the surviving Klaxosapiens. He says he'll operate it with her since he's always dreamed of it since they met. She suddenly pins him down and says she needs no partner, but she'll use the one he's offered. Strelizia tries to open a gate, but can't. 001 catches up and pulls Zero Two out, saying that she's a duplicate that doesn't realize she's being used by the invaders. She says she isn't fit to pilot their child before throwing her out. She kisses Hiro and says he must not be an ordinary human before closing the door. She says she'll devour him and opens the door. At Cosmos, Gorilla says that the worst has come to pass, and the work on 002 will be in vain. Marmoset says that if she connects the Star Entity, they'll be defeated. The Vice Chairman says they've already taken measures. Hachi and Dr. FRANXX see that she's connected to Strelizia, and Dr. FRANXX falls into Hachi. He says he wasn't expecting her to link with a human and thinks she'll devour once again. Hiro asks how she can pilot Strelizia. She says it was originally one of their brethren. Her horns begin glowing, and she sends a message to the pilots. Dr. FRANXX and Hachi hear as well. Dr. FRANXX says that he found that the Klaxosaur split into 2 forms. One returned to the Earth and became energy. Baboon says that the seal is an affront. Gorilla says that the magma energy is part of the planet's resources that save humans from ruin. 001 says they're selfish and asks if they now want to steal her child. She says she won't allow it and that the child is a crystallization of their bonds. Alpha tells her not to talk down to Papa. Dr. FRANXX finishes that the other form consumed that energy and evolved physically and stopped mingling with one another and lost their intelligence. Hachi asks what they are, and he says weapons built by the Klaxosapiens. They're composed of one male and one female Klaxosapien. The female's soul connected to the weapon, and the male soul took root in the core, the cockpit. Hachi says that it's similar to the FRANXX. Dr. FRANXX says that they're an application of the Klaxosaur system. Klaxosaurs that can be piloted by humans genetically modified to be similar. The parasites realize they've been kept in the dark. 001 tells her child to awaken since they're nearly there. She begins the implanting process. Papa says that he was hoping it wouldn't come to this, but they have no choice. Vice Chairman says they wanted to take it and Herringhorny to space as soldiers. Papa says that if they can't have it, then it can go down along with the planet and they'll return to their original roles. Klaxosaur begin popping out of the ground and shooting into space. They shoot spaceships in the sky. Star Entity wakes up and Dr. FRANXX says it's beautiful. 001 says that the humans made her ugly, but it's okay. She says a long time ago when they were attacked by invaders from the expanse of space, they fought and drove them off, and then holed up in the earth to prepare. They shoot at the Verm fleet. They shoot back and 001 says that she won't let them touch their planet. It shoots back and destroys it. Papa says it's futile and she asks what Verm did to their child. The chairman and vice chairman's masks fall and the vice chairman says that Star Entity is a massive life that could disturb the universe's peace. Papa says that if the Klaxosaur princess took over the implanting process, they programmed it to explode. They say that the planet will explode and leave nothing behind. Papa says that they'll take them to eternal paradise. 02 continues to walk forward and says she'll keep her promise to Hiro. For you, my love. Vice Chairman announces that it's Verm's will for Star Entity, which is a massive life that could disturb the universe's peace. Papa says that if the Klaxosaur princess took over the implanting process, they programmed it to explode. The other members of the council are confused, and Papa explains that they have assimilated several lifeforms from all over the universe and helped them break free of the shells of their bodies. Vice Chairman says that the time has come for humans to embrace their evolution. They say that there exists a form of pleasure that is gentle and perpetual that they will experience. The three fall to the ground. Hiro curses as 001 struggles. He connects to her consciousness. He asks if she's been alone since humanity existed. 02 walks along looking for Hiro. The other parasites watch as Verm kills other parasites. They wonder who they should be fighting. Dr. FRANXX says that the detonation stalled once Hiro connected. The explosion is triggered by stampede mode. 02 says that he bought them some time before collapsing. The parasites wonder what they should do and worry about what the announcement said. They agree to return to Grand Crevice to see for themselves. 001 says that Verm got her and that it's no use. Hiro asks about Verm and how long she'd been alive. 001 says that it's been more than 60 million years. They inhabited Earth as an advanced civilization. One day, Verm arrived. They were a group mind with no physical bodies, and they wanted them to cast aside their bodies and join. During the war, they forged themselves into immortal weapons and evolved into Klaxosaurs. By the time they fought off Verm, fighting and warfare were all that remained of their civilization, and they lost their ability to procreate. The enemy they fought off was Verm's vanguard. To prepare for their return, they went underground and the weak turned themselves into energy, and the strong combined to evolve into even stronger weapons. 02 wakes up and says that 001 called her a fake. Dr. FRANXX says that 001 is the sole survivor of the Klaxosapiens, and that she's her clone. She was created to operate Star Entity on behalf of the human race. He says that she was the only success. He created the Nines using her cells too, but they didn't inherit the Klaxosaur blood. She says that she's going to save Hiro, and she doesn't care about the rest. Dr. FRANXX says that he'll go as well. As Squad 13 continues, they run into the Nines. They command them to return and continue to follow Papa's orders. They kill more Klaxosaur, but are attacked and killed by Verm. The FRANXX break through, and they go to help the two. Ikuno and Futoshi clear a path, causing Ikuno's hair to turn gray. They let 02 go alone with Ichigo and Goro. 001 and Hiro continue to struggle, and he relates to their want to fight, but feels that he wasn't really living when he only wanted to fight. Herringhorny begins flying. 9 Alpha asks Papa to say something. Dr. FRANXX and 02 continue as they stay to fight Verm. Dr. FRANXX sacrifices his arm to the door as it contains 001's cells, though he did want them to turn him into a Klaxosaur. The snake allows Zero Two to ride, and she asks him if he took her to Plantation 13 to reunite with Hiro. He says he wasn't expecting them to rekindle what they had, and it was just a whim. Smiling, she thanks him for creating her and helps her meet Hiro. After he goes, he wonders how she became so human. As they break through the wall, the snake Klaxosaur dies. She opens the door to Strelizia and tries to revive Hiro. She finds out that he's covered in blood and that they'd run out of time. Her horns break free and her skin turns red, and she kisses him. 001 gives the rest of her strength to them. She stakes the planet on them. The two reunite under a tree after keeping their promise. They kiss, and the bomb disintegrates. It breaks their program and begins attacking Verm. Dr. FRANXX finds her beautiful before a rock kills him. Verm takes their lance and withdraws, saying that they'll bring back their army. Panting, Hiro smiles and says to Zero Two that they did it. She doesn't respond, and her face is lifeless as her horn crumbles. Stargazers. Hiro takes care of Zero Two while she's in a catatonic state and is confused when mysterious injuries begin showing up on her body. Hiro finds the last page of her story blank, and he realizes she deliberately left it blank because she foresaw that they would part ways one day. She starts wandering around from her room and goes outside, looking at the sky. Hiro vows to be with her, and when his horns make contact with her, he realizes her mind is with Strelizia, and she's actually fighting Verm in Mars's orbit system in space. Hiro decides to go to the battlefield and save Zero Two, even though Squad 13, specifically Goro, tell him he'll die. Hiro says if Zero Two can't smile at him, he would rather be dead. Before leaving, Hiro cuddles with Zero Two as they sleep side by side. Darling in the FRANXX. Zero Two stands outside and looks up at the sky while Kokoro and Mitsuru watch her. She starts walking aimlessly and tries to reach for the sky when new injuries begin appearing on her body. Kokoro becomes alarmed and makes it her responsibility to protect her. Even when a heavy thunderstorm rolls by, Kokoro refuses to leave Zero Two's side. Concerned for Kokoro's safety as she's pregnant, Mitsuru decides to stay with them both. In space, Hiro is able to connect with Zero Two's consciousness and finds that her mind is filled with pages from her story. Hiro recalls his promise to be with her forever and wants her to devour him. Zero Two says they can't be together because he needs to be human. Zero Two says she's fine being alone, but Hiro approaches her and offers her his hand. She takes his hand and they embrace, with him vowing to be with her always. On Earth, her body turns into a statue, whereas in space, Zero Two's mind via Strelizia evolves into Strelizia True Apis, and she annihilates a horde of Verm fleets. Then, a warp gate opens. She explains to Squad 13 that the Klaxosapiens built the satellites to open it a long time ago. She and Hiro decide to enter it together because only they can go through. Squad 13 protests this, and Zero Two explains they decided this in order to end the war. When asked if they'll return, neither gave an answer. Nevertheless, everyone says they believe Hiro and Zero Two will come back because their squad isn't the same without them, and they'll all build a home together, moving Zero Two to tears. She and Hiro take a Klaxosaur bomb and then enter the warp gate. Never let me go. After 70 days of traveling, Hiro notes that he hasn't had the need to eat or sleep and wonders if he's becoming a full Klaxosaur. Zero Two asks if he's afraid, but he says no because he feels like he's becoming part of her. They come across a swarm of Verm and proceed to wipe them out. Hiro says that he doesn't recognize the stars because they're so far away from Earth. Zero Two suggests they create their own constellation before they encounter more Verm and destroy them. 783 days since the gate passage, Hiro falls asleep and Zero Two notes that it's unusual and worries he's getting weak from pushing himself. He says he had a dream in which their friends were living good lives and another dream in which the two of them meet in a distant future, but he believes it's hope for them. Zero Two replies no matter what destiny they face, they'll be together forever. They finally reach the Verm home planet and are confronted by Papa and the Vice Chairman. Verm soldiers attack them, and Hiro is knocked out and loses his connection with Zero Two, who's impaled by hearing horny. Papa and the Vice Chairman says this is due to the pair's incompatibility of Hiro being human and Zero Two being a Klaxosaur. Zero Two calls out for her friends to save Hiro. Squad 13 surmises Zero Two's body can serve as a link to her and Hiro in space. They hold hands and send their thoughts to them, which gradually reaches them. Hiro regains consciousness when he hears Mitsuru and Kokoro say they had a daughter and named her Ai because it means love, a word they were never taught but learned from Hiro and Zero Two. She credits Hiro for starting the series of events that made everyone's lives like this. Hiro says that it's not something to be proud of because all he did was cause trouble to them. Zero Two replies it's because of his will to live and encourages him to join her so they rewrite history. They kiss and reconnect. Reverting back to the Strelizia Iron Maiden form, Hiro and Zero Two take control of heroine and destroy the fleets before they force the Klaxosaur bomb into the planet and thrust Strelizia into the bomb to detonate it. Knowing they'll vanish when it detonates, they profess their love to each other. The bomb explodes and all the souls kept in the planet are liberated, though Papa and the Vice Chairman survive and vow to return at the peak of evolution. On Earth, everyone sees the blast and realizes Hiro and Zero Two won, but sacrificed themselves, which saddened them. Zero Two's body then cracks into dust, and a single plant is left. Over the next 8 years, the memory of Hiro and Zero Two remains on the minds of their friends. Ichigo finishes Zero Two's storybook, and all the children are taught to read it in their memory. Squad 13 reunites at a cherry tree that grew from Zero Two's ashes, and they thank Hiro and Zero Two for the lessons they learned from the two, and for giving them a chance to live normal lives. 1,000 years later, a young boy who resembles Hiro meets a young girl who resembles Zero Two. The young girl trips down on the roots, and the young boy picks her up. Then the girl asks of the boy's name, and he introduces himself. It's revealed that they're the reincarnations of Hiro and Zero Two, and a new story